What you know about PE fitness? A more in-depth look on Gemelli's business. The #1 channel for performance enhancement. If you searching for muscle advance, can't learn it from a book or a pamphlet. Tune in for the answers, cause your body's too precious to take any chances.
Welcome everyone, Dylan Gemelli here today with a brand new video for you. And today, we're gonna talk about staying dry on Deca Durabolin. But before we get into that, just a big shout out and thank you to everybody out there watching and supporting the channel. I cannot thank you enough. If you haven't yet, please like, share, subscribe, comment. Anything that you can do to interact with the channel helps the channel to grow, and it allows me to produce more and more content for you each and every day. So, some of you are probably going, staying dry on Deca? That's kind of an anomaly, isn't it? And let me just put it to you like this. Anybody that has been doing this for a long time will tell you that you can cut on anything. Now, you're saying, really, Dylan? Because I would always say this to people, especially when I was younger. Oh, I'm going to cut on D-ball, really? Nobody's saying it's optimal. It's certainly not. But diet dictates everything. Now, cutting with D-ball, and I'm just throwing that out there, it can be problematic. There's got to be a lot of estrogen control. You got to have the right doses. Your diet has to be strictly on point, but it certainly can be done because diet dictates everything that we do. Now, with Deca, one of the things that I've seen over all of the years, and especially, you know, when I was in my earlier years, in my 20s especially, I kind of did this fall in line with what everybody else said. So I just used to write and comment and do videos that, oh, Deca, it's so wet and you're going to just blow up like a water balloon. Can that happen? Certainly. Can it be prevented? Absolutely. Can Deca actually be pretty dry? Yes. But there's some key things and key factors here. Aside from the obvious, which is diet, okay? Some of the problems that I see and the reasons that people blow up or that they have terrible Deca side effects. One, and I think this would be rather obvious, running Deca too high. So many people think that you need to run, and this doesn't just hold true for Deca, it holds true for everything, that more is always better concept that many of you have heard me talk about. More is not always better, and oftentimes, especially with steroids and PEDs, more is worse. Because what comes along with more may be on the surface bigger gains, but oftentimes it comes with bigger side effects, and with bigger side effects, then we have longer recovery times and less gains maintained. All right, so running Deca too high is going to bring on a lot of side effects. One of the main side effects with Deca that many of us are aware of is the increase in prolactin. And when you have a problem with prolactin and estrogen, especially together, certainly you can have water retention or gain unwanted weight. Another problem is because Deca is looked at as a bulking compound, which it is, you know, and for me, more or less, I would call it more of a recomposition compound because I understand how it works and how to use it, but I understand the bulking aspect of it and why so many people opt for it. And when I recommend a bulking cycle, oftentimes Deca's involved because of the size that you can potentially get from it. But diet and things like that can really play a key role here. A lot of people will dirty bulk, which I've talked about, which is a non-existent bro science bullshit idea that you can just eat whatever you want, whenever you want. Essentially, it's a license to just be a fucking pig in my book. And I hate that. But that's going to be a problem with it, that people, their diet is just all over the place. The third thing, which to me is probably the biggest reason that we see the water retention, is the testosterone to Deca ratio. Now, first and foremost, let me just talk about the Deca dose itself. I never, ever recommend going over 400 milligrams of Deca. Some of you are going to disagree. A lot of people like to go 500, 600 milligrams of Deca. There is zero, and I mean zero, need to do that. If you can't get gains from Deca with anywhere between 250 to 400 milligrams, then there's a couple problems there. One, you got dog shit Deca. Two, your diet and your training are just all over the map. And three, you just don't know what you're doing. Okay? Or four, maybe it's just something with your genetics and that's out of your control. But the testosterone to Deca ratio, you're going to see people that say, oh, you got to run tests so high and DECA so low. The problem is that people will run it way too high and they'll start to get a ton of estrogen conversion, which we know can be a problem. And then that brings in the estrogen to prolactin ratio. If you don't control them both and everything's not in line, issues arise. And running tests too high can be a big problem with it. Now, on the opposite end of the spectrum, I never recommend running DECA too high either. That can also bring on a slew of DECA problems, the infamous DECA dick. That's extreme suppression that you get, the high amounts of prolactin. These are all things that can all be avoided if you just run it with some common sense, I guess I would say. You can be far more conservative, but still gain a ton. So what I always recommend is to keep the ratios either identical or test just a skosh higher. And when I say a skosh higher, I'm talking 25, 50 milligrams higher. When you start running, I find, and everybody's different, and some people will swear by certain ways, but for most, in my experience, it's keeping them equal or close together is going to mitigate the side effects and keep them a lot lower. My recommendations are generally going to be 250 to 300 to 325, around that range of each test in DECA. Make sure you're controlling estrogen. Make sure you're controlling prolactin. Proviron is a great addition to run alongside DECA. It seems to mitigate a lot of the problems that can occur on there. And it also frees up the bound testosterone, as we know, keeps SHBG lower. And it pairs really nicely there. And I'm a fan of it on any cycle, and it's not C17 alpha alkylated, so it's not toxic. You're not going to have side effects with it. There may be possibly a little bit of hair loss being a DHT, but only if you're prone to MPB, and it's more or less not likely. So that's a great addition there. Your ancillaries are important. If you're on TRT, you don't need any PCT, but if you're not on TRT, PCT is imperative. With something like DECA, that's a longer ester, that lingers longer, I would really recommend a 6-week PCT with it. Recovery can be tough with DECA, but you can stay dry. You can. But there's like I said, I covered every aspect that needs to be covered with it to do that. It does not have to be your enemy. DECA can be your friend if you just respect it and use it properly. So that's how you stay dry on DECA, my friends. That being said, stay tuned for plenty more to come. Dylan Gemelli, signing off.